Welcome to My Life on a GLP-1, the podcast where we talk honestly about the real experiences of living with GLP-1 medications. I'm Scott Johnson, your host.
And I'm Sarah, your co-host. Today we're diving into something that comes up constantly in the GLP-1 community, that shift from thinking this medication is temporary to realizing it might be a forever drug.
Right. And let's be honest, most of us started this journey thinking we'd lose the weight, learn some better habits, and then just stop taking it.
Exactly. Like it was going to be this temporary fix that would somehow rewire our brains permanently.
The phrase forever drug began appearing organically in online communities as long-term users started speaking honestly about their plans. Early conversations in these spaces were dominated by countdowns and timelines. People talked about 6-month goals, target weights, and graduation plans. The tone now is noticeably different.
Long-term users are talking about maintenance dosing, about tapering to lower doses and staying there indefinitely, and about accepting that for them, this medication is not a temporary intervention but an ongoing one.
I finally understand what normal hunger feels like. I am not going back to the other version.
That kind of honesty used to carry a social cost. People worried about being judged for admitting they plan to stay on medication long-term. Now the sentiment is becoming so widespread that it is reshaping how the entire community talks about these drugs and what success on them actually means.
It's funny when that reality hits. You realize that what these medications are actually doing is managing something that was broken in the first place. They're not teaching your body new tricks. They're compensating for faulty hunger signaling that was probably never working right to begin with.
Mm-hmm. And that's where the whole concept of food noise becomes so important to understand. Can you explain what food noise is for people who might be new to this?
Sure, food noise is that constant mental chatter about food. It's when you're always thinking about your next meal, or what's in the fridge, or whether you should eat something, or feeling guilty about what you just ate. For some people, it's this relentless background soundtrack that never stops.
Right, exactly. And it can be completely exhausting. Some people describe it as having a radio playing food commercials in their head all day long. You might be in the middle of an important meeting and suddenly find yourself thinking about whether there are cookies in the break room.
And what's wild is that people who don't have this don't even realize it exists. They think everyone experiences food the way they do. You eat when you're hungry, you stop when you're full, and then you forget about food until the next time you're actually hungry.
Totally, and this is why the standard advice of just eat less is so frustrating and frankly useless for people with dysregulated hunger signals. It's like telling someone with depression to just think positive thoughts.
Exactly. When your hunger and satiety hormones aren't working properly, willpower becomes this finite resource that you're constantly depleting. The GLP-1 medications essentially give you back normal hunger and fullness cues that other people just naturally have.
Right? Which is why it makes total sense to think of this as chronic condition management rather than some kind of personal failure.
But there's still this grief that comes with that realization, isn't there? That moment when you understand this might be forever. Think about it. We wouldn't tell a diabetic that they should just try harder to naturally produce insulin, or that they're weak for needing medication. We understand that their pancreas isn't working properly, and they need medical intervention to manage it.
Oh, absolutely. There's this mourning process for the version of yourself you thought you could become, the person who would magically develop normal hunger cues and never struggle with food again. You have to grieve that fantasy.
And then there's the practical fear. What if insurance stops covering it? What if there's a shortage? What if I can't access it anymore? Those are very real concerns that people taking these medications long term have to live with.
And we know what happens when people stop taking them. The food noise typically comes back, the hunger dysregulation returns, and the weight usually comes back too. It's not because people are weak or lack willpower. And the financial anxiety is real too. These medications can be incredibly expensive without insurance coverage. People are building relationships with specific pharmacies, tracking manufacturer coupons, and sometimes rationing doses when supplies get tight.
Right. It's because you're no longer managing the underlying physiological issue. It's like taking someone's glasses away and then being surprised they can't see clearly.
That's such a good analogy.
But here's what I love about the GLP-1 community. There's this shared understanding and humor about all of this. People talk about their food thoughts finally quieting down, or joke about actually forgetting to eat lunch because they're not constantly thinking about food anymore.
Yes, and there's this collective relief when people realize they're not broken or lacking willpower. They just had a medical condition that needed medical treatment. The shame starts to lift when you understand the science behind it.
For anyone considering long-term use, understanding what typically happens when people stop is a useful piece of information, and the honest answer is it varies. But for a large number of people, the food noise comes back.
Clinical research supports what long-term users report anecdotally. Studies following patients after they discontinued found that the majority regained a substantial portion of their lost weight within a year, along with the return of metabolic markers that had improved during treatment. The biological mechanisms driving weight gain had not been permanently altered. They had just been managed.
There is a turning point that comes up. What takes its place is harder to quantify but easier to feel. It is the mental clarity that comes from not running a food management program in the background of every waking hour.
Yes, it's about the freedom of going to a dinner party and being present for the actual dinner rather than spending the meal doing math.
I read an interesting description that tends to resonate widely. It's the idea that you did not just lose weight. You've lost the version of yourself who was constantly at war with your own body.
And for me personally, I find I do not miss that version at all.
That is so true, Sarah. When that shift happens, forever stops sounding like a life sentence and starts sounding like a reasonable description of what a good quality of life looks like.
There is real relief running underneath all of it. It is the laughter of people who spent years assuming their struggle was a moral failing, discovering that it was mostly a physiological one. That revelation tends to arrive with equal parts liberation and a very understandable frustration that nobody told them sooner.
Now, let's talk about having these conversations with your doctor because that can be tricky. Many doctors are still thinking about these medications as short-term weight loss tools rather than long-term chronic condition management.
Exactly. So it's important to come prepared. Talk about your experience with food noise, explain how the medication has changed your relationship with food, and be honest about what happens when you've tried to stop or reduce the dose.
And don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. You can say something like, I understand these medications are often prescribed short-term, but my experience suggests I need ongoing support for hunger regulation. Can we discuss a long-term management plan?
That's perfect. You're framing it as the medical issue it actually is, not as a personal failing or lack of willpower.
The bottom line is this. If these medications are improving your quality of life, managing a legitimate physiological issue, and helping you maintain better health outcomes, then taking them long term isn't something to feel guilty about.
Absolutely. And remember, you're not alone in this. I also want to pause and thank everyone for being with us. I hope you will take a moment to give our podcast a 5-star rating and always encourage you to visit Scott's website at mylifeonglp1.com. Tell us, Scott, what final words of advice do you have on whether this might be a forever drug for many of us?
Thanks, Sarah. If you are sitting somewhere right now quietly thinking that you might want to stay on this medication for a long time, you are not broken. You are not weak. You are paying attention to what your own experience is telling you, and you are taking it seriously. That is not a character flaw. That might actually be the most self-aware thing you can do. So, on behalf of Sarah, I'm Scott Johnson, reminding you we are releasing episodes differently this year. We are dropping 2 episodes weekly. Thank you for always returning and supporting us, and remember to always love your journey.